Hi, Professor Wills here. Welcome back. We're continuing with our study of the art history of the ancient world with ancient Greece. Specifically, we're going to look at the transition between the archaic and early classical to high classical periods in sculpture. So I've got some great examples lined up for you, both in marble and in something much more rare in the ancient world, which is bronze. As you know, when civilizations collapse, bronze is often, if it's in the form of an artwork, is often the first to be melted and smelted into something completely different and probably more ordinary and utilitarian. So this is a rare exception that I'll show you where they found it, which probably kept it safe for all of these millennia. But without further ado, let's explore this continued quest or path towards increasing believable naturalism of the human body. We talked about how they were starting to get it right in the archaic period. We started to see the description of human anatomy with accurate proportions. Now we're going to start to see the description of the human body with naturalistic looking behavior, how our bodies respond to standing, for instance. You know, that is very much what we do on a daily basis. That is very recognizable. All right, so let's get to it. I'll move on to our PowerPoints here. Let me minimize myself for the remainder of our mini lecture for our art history survey class. All right, meet the Grittiest Boy. This is a marble sculpture, rather petite, about 3 feet in height, that was found among other sculptures excavated at the Acropolis in Athens, Greece. He dates from about 480 BCE and really is the beginning of dipping our toes into our next era of the early classical period in Greece. Now, this sculpture was found with many others at the Acropolis, and that's a result of the devastation and damage caused by the sacking of Athens by the great Persian Empire, their arch enemy. So, though they had some initial victories against the Persian Empire, ultimately there was a devastating loss of Athens at one point in time. Don't worry, the Athenians will rebound in a magnificent way in that same location. But it was almost like they just wanted to start over again. And so a lot of what was devastated and lost was simply piled up and buried. And of course, to archaeologists' delight when they discovered a treasure trove of the before times, the before sacking of Athens, when they discovered all of these sculptures, including the Prettyest Boy that you see here. So this marble sculpture, as you can see, demonstrates all of the naturalism we've been talking about, gaining momentum and accuracy in the archaic periods. But, you know, as a quick little reminder, looking back here, we talked about how it always wasn't so. So if we look at a sculpture from a century or more earlier, the Kouros from Attica, from the year 600 BCE, Kouros meaning young male. This is a sculpture in marble as well that doesn't nearly come close to the naturalism of the Grittiest Boy. You can see a sculpture that's relatively stiff with arms bound to the side, a very rigid, almost soldier-like frontal presentation, right, of the torso and head. And though, you know, they're starting to get an interest in looking at the human body, we see a description of the pectoral muscles and the abdominal muscles. The face, extremely generic. The hair, very kind of abstract, stylized, patternized, not looking like real human hair. And then this strange foot slid forward thing. It's not like it's taking a step forward, right? We don't see a bend of the knee. This is something, I'll take myself away for a minute. Here's a little flashback to ancient Egypt, to the year 2450, when the statue of a famous Old Kingdom era pharaoh also demonstrates a similar look. So you can see a little cross-pollination happening, or I should say one-way pollination happening, of Egypt kind of influencing the early archaic period sculpture of the Greeks, but they'll leave that quickly behind because they are really hungry for trying to get as close as possible an accurate representation of the human body. And you can see that blossoming in the early classical period with the Grittiest Boy. Okay, I've moved forward a little too far. Let me take you back. We'll get to that other statue in a minute here. But what really makes this sculpture momentous is a small thing. And it's a weight shift. And it's something we do without even being aware of it all day long when we're in line at Starbucks or at the grocery store, at the movies, whatever. You find that you don't stand with both your knees locked, waiting in line, right? You tend to give one leg a break. You bend the knee, you swing your hip to one side of the body, and that give a little weight shift and take a load off, I guess is what they say. And that's what's happening with the Prettyest Boy. He's taking a little bit of a load off one leg. This leg, the knee remains locked. This knee, even though it's a broken leg here, we've lost the lower leg to damage and to time, but you can see a bend of the knee showing that it is more relaxed compared to the other working leg. So this is the leg that's supporting the body. The weight of the body is then kind of thrust into one hip, and this is called the contrapposto stance. This is a Greek innovation that is a weight shift that describes this pivot in weight from one leg to the other. This is something that not only are they getting the naturalism of the human body, right? A believable skeletal structure that's in proportion, muscle groupings, the firmness, the fleshiness, you know, describing the human body as well, but also just how the body behaves, right? That weight shift that we all do when we're standing for a period of time. Now, what it also does is through observation, Greek sculptors are noticing too that doing that simple change, that shift in your stance, has a ripple effect on up the body. So you can see that the knees are no longer aligned side by side as they were in that earlier archaic period chorus. The hips are no longer aligned. There's a slight diagonal to them. And its whole spine, if you could turn the statue around, you would see the effect of that contrapposto stance all the way up to the shoulders. Then with a slight turn of the head, instead of a forward-facing head, you have something much more believable and naturalistic in describing the behavior of the human body. Moving on here, another example from early classical times is this magnificent bronze statue called the Therios Warrior. This is a rare, very much mostly intact statue of a warrior. He would have originally been holding a shield and a sword in his clenched hands. Those have now been lost, but we also know he's a warrior because he's wearing a helmet on his head. Now, he is representative of a more mature, powerful male. You can see the physique is a bit more buffed out. He's got a full beard, but look at that, contrapposto stance. So it's been fully integrated into Greek arts by the time we're at this early classical period here, post sacking of Athens. The whole recovery of Athens and the arts as well is gaining traction and momentum. Now, bronze sculptures we've been looking at here and there, right? But when you have a sculpture this large, this is at least 6.5 feet in height. If it was solid bronze, man, it would weigh as much as a car. It would weigh a ton. So keep in mind that many sculptures, and this one is in such good condition because it was found in the 20th century as part of an ancient shipwreck off the coast of Italy. You can see he looks almost like he's been pulled out, like a swimmer pulled out of water here, but if you look carefully, you can see all kinds of coral crustaceans that have been making the Therios Warrior their home for millennia. But it's the lost wax method, I'll take myself away here for a minute, that really saves the day in terms of making bronze sculptures that large, affordable or cost-effective, but also not weigh so much. So through this technique, and I'll give you some links on Canvas about it, but it allowed sculptors in this age to create a work of art that had incredible strength and was malleable enough to add fine details to, again, part of that quest to describe the body so convincingly, so naturalistically. This is one more example of a god. This is probably either Zeus about to hurl his famous attribute, a lightning bolt, or it could be the god of the sea, Poseidon, who would be carrying a trident. This is from the year 450 BCE, but this particular sculpture is also relatively large. It's approaching 7 feet almost, but because of the lost wax method, its hollow core, it still has incredible strength. If you could imagine this sculpture in marble, fingers would be broken off, maybe arms, maybe legs. But this open positioning, we're not even looking at a contrapositive stance. We're even seeing one foot elevated on a set of toes there in this athletic, open, dynamic pose. Because of the strength of bronze, it was a successful outcome. Finally, let's meet one more example of sculpture that unfortunately did not survive in its original state, a copy of a sculpture that is now from the transition from the early classical to the high classical period, was found in, of all places, Pompeii, that famous Roman city by the sea that was buried by a volcano. But in excavations, this beauty was found, and it's a Roman copy in marble of what they think was a bronze original by the famous high classical Greek sculptor Polykleitos from the year 450 BCE. Now, we're seeing all of the accuracy of proportions. We're seeing that contrapposta stance. We know all about that. What Polykleitos brought to the table is something called a system of cross balance. So it's kind of a behavior of opposites that you see here. So along with the formula of contrapositive stance and the head slightly turned, right, and the believability of the physiology of the human body, what he does is not only does he have the behavior of a working leg and a resting leg, but then he has the behavior of opposites on the same side of the body. So for instance, if the right leg is working, the left leg is working, the left arm would be at rest. Whereas if the leg here is at rest, then the arm aligned on the same side of the body would be working. So it's this way of describing the human body both at rest, but in action at the same time. So for instance, if you're watching this lecture, you're seemingly at rest, seated before your computers, but you are engaging your core in your chair, you're moving your hand, taking notes. That's what's going on here, but in a standing figure. So it's combining both a figure that's working but at rest at the same time, and this appearance of motion while at rest is this way of describing this harmony of opposites, as well as the perfection of proportions in Greek art. And of course, all of that will inform what we'll study coming up soon, the importance of the human body and proportions and harmony in the building of their iconic high classical era temples like the Parthenon. All right, more about that coming up soon. Thanks for listening.